Hi, I'm Terry Murphy with Realty Times Women in Business, Women in Real Estate, and one of my favorites, In the Men's Room with Murph. And I have an extraordinary talent there today with me today. Stefan Swanepoel has literally redefined real estate over the last 15 years with his amazing trends reports. Welcome, Stefan.
Terry, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you guys are. Thank you for the invite. Wonderful to be here.
Well, it is wonderful to have you. You know, never before has there been so many different elements of residential real estate brokerage, trends, technology, influencers, all in one place. And you were brilliant enough to come up with that 15 years ago. 15, which is like dog years when you think about it. And that goes way back to 24 years ago when you wrote the book, Real Estate Confronts the Future. Wow. So what was your trajectory for writing something on an annual basis that has consistent impact on our residential in real estate in general and the trends that affect people every day of their lives? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Terry, our industry is so large, the residential real estate industry that you've referred to. I mean, the industry as a total does $1.5 trillion of business a year, right? And you and I have tens of thousands of people which we know and we like and we love, men and women across all the states of the country. And yet, generally speaking, we don't have a lot of resources for good quality information. So when I was a CEO of a large franchise and a large brokerage company, I was looking for those kind of, I don't know, nuggets of wisdom and best practices and information and tables and directions, like a roadmap. And I couldn't find it. It was scarce. You had to really dig and dig to find it. So I decided I was going to leave the world of operational real estate, which I had been in many years, and I was going to do what my passion was, and that is research. And collect, gather, clean, scrub, analyze all the information that you can find and gradually try and sort it out and put it into a report or a book or a website or whatever, it doesn't mind where it is, so that it is accessible for mainly leaders and managers, but also for agents and teams and those people that want to be ahead of the curve. Some of us don't mind being with the curve. And then there are people like you and me that we want to be right there where the curve is, where the wave breaks. And to do that, you have to peek into the future just a little bit.
Well, your background, of course, is being born in Nairobi, Kenya, which of course is not particularly close to real estate in the United States. And all of your work has, you know, with even nonprofits and franchises. I mean, you've been an integral and highly influential part of our real estate industry. When you wrote the trends, did you ever know that you would do the Almanac, which is the first time in this 2020 came out? It's only 450 pages. If you can't work out, you can just carry this book around and it will build your upper body. I mean, it is amazing. Tell us about your thought process for going from the trends report, which was always highly coveted, to now this Almanac, which is serving a whole different introspection into the industry.
Thank you. Yeah, bodybuilding is good, weightlifting is good. So two different worlds. The trends report is a deep analysis of what's happened in the last 12 months, who's new, who's bought who, which companies are growing, which leadership are doing which activities, which new business models, which new technologies. So it looks at the shifts and the changes and the innovation and the growth. And then it tries to analyze which one of those strategies and plans have cash, money, momentum, management behind them, so that we can not really predict, but that you could say this has a good shot of succeeding or impacting your neighborhood because it's a growing trend. So we look every year at 10 trends. We've been doing that, as you correctly said, now for 15 years. So we've looked at 150 trends, everything from mobile technology to virtual office websites, to lead generation, to portals, to consumers, to iBuyers, to virtual websites. So we've tried to look at as many things as we can. In doing that, you want to know what the industry consists of. Who's the biggest, who's the smallest, who's growing, what the numbers are. So the document you're referring to now, the Almanac, is really born out of the frustration of having people quote numbers in the media or online or in blog posts. And I'm looking at that number and I say, oh, so-and-so said so-and-so, and I look at it, I go like, but that's not true. That doesn't fly. Whoever on earth said that? How did you get to this number? So what we started doing is we started saying, well, we have to analyze this piece of real estate. And as you did that one piece, you realized, oh my goodness, there's another piece and another piece and another piece and another piece. And before you know it, you can't see the end at the light of the tunnel. I mean, you're just piling on. And it's not about stats. It's not about numbers. It's about knowing where the winners are, where the growth opportunities are, and where you as a leader, whether you're a woman or a man leader or a business leader or a franchise leader, association leader, a real estate leader, where do you have to position yourself and your company so that you can be at the right place when things happen?
Well, I think you did a remarkable job of taking content and taking it from content data, just having all of the analytics and transforming it. So it's really content dump versus content transformation. You put enough of a hyper-local relevance on it. And in the Almanac, you break that actually into 5 different areas. Would you just kind of break that out for?
Yeah, sure. And the 5 sections you refer to is actually that's at the highest level.
Right.
So I grouped people together. So that's leaders, executive managers, founders, creators, association, tech, inside our industry, outside our industry, women, men, young, old. I mean, we try to look at all of them. Then the second section, as we said, everything what we call is organized real estate. That's the association, state and local, and the MLSs, anything which is sort of the non-profit, and I know that MLSs are profitable, but the non-profit kind of glue that keeps our industry together. Then we said the next stage was all the brokerage companies. So all there are 86,000 brokerage companies in the country. So if you look at all of those brokerage companies, then the next category was, well, are there any holding structures above them? Parent companies like the Realogies or the Berkshire Hathaways, public companies, right? The Warren Buffetts of this world. The Remax is a public company. Compass is going to go public most likely. So the Redfunds, the EXPs. So we then looked at franchises, franchisors, holding companies, public companies, and all of those complex structures to try and explain how they fit in. And then last but not least, we said, oh, the whole world of technology. The thousands. We think that there's about 2,500 vendors, companies, products, and services that our dear realtors use. And it is so confusing. It takes you weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks sometimes just to figure out who's on first and who's on second. So we thought, let's go and analyze them all and put them into buckets. So we actually broke them into 64 different buckets: back office, front office, lead gen, accounting. So if you say, I'm looking for whatever, back office software, we've credited you a list and said, there's so many players in the space. Here are the best 5 or 6 or 7. Give them all a call, have them come and do you a demonstration. So we want to make management in real estate a little bit easier by giving you good data, good information.
And that good information is so relevant because the way you structured it. Now, you also came up with every year, the 10 topics that are the hottest or the most controversial or the most influential. And you talked about redefining the edge of the real estate transaction. Now, would that incorporate some of the technology that you've been referring to?
Yeah, definitely. The T360 is not a news media company. We are not like Inman. Inman reports the news every day, and they do that well. That is important to read the news every day. We don't report the news. We're not a news service. What we try to do is understand the news, right? So we'll take the topics which are in the news and say, okay, so what does this mean? And we have the luxury that we can spend now a month or 2 or 3 by taking one topic and taking a really deep dive into the bottom and say, let's see if I understand this. Is it going to work? Does it work? Has it got enough money? Has it got legs? Let's explain the differences. Is it unique? Is it different? Is it special? Do I care? Right? You have to analyze all of those kind of stuff. So the edge of the transaction is but one part. Is it the edge of the transaction with regard to ancillary services, maybe mortgage and title? Is it with regard to technology? Is it with regard to the changing business model? We want to try and make the trend topics, they're not promotional. They're not necessarily specifically intended to be edgy. They're supposed to be relevant. If Terry's going to go into business tomorrow, what should Terry know a lot about? And we'll tell you what you need to know a lot about.
And you also identify, and thank you for that, you also identify the players that influence the industry. And it was really interesting when we looked at And by the way, for people who don't know that T360 is the company behind Stefan, or Stefan is the person behind that, is that you do deal with research and strategic analysis, and you do that from a very high level, but you bring it down to what the average broker can use anywhere in the country, which is what's so special and differentiated about that service. But you know, Sherry Chris said, it's the go-to book on what is happening within the industry, a great source of real, quote, information to help brokers brands plan for what lies ahead. And because, and she says it gets better and better every year, but we already know that. The issue is now that, you know, real estate was on a very flat line for a long time. You and I go way back to before there was what there is today.
Before paper.
Well, okay, I wasn't going to say that, but yes, you're right. Way back to when there was, you know, it was just kind of complacent. And then with the advent of the Realtors Information Network, which became Realtor.com, and the unbundling of proprietary information, everything had to change, but the industry itself wasn't necessarily keeping up with that. And so technology was a big piece, which I think is one of the most interesting parts of the Almanac. Your message in 2018, I want to share this, was when you did the trends report, was change does not move in a straight line, which has been very evident. In 2017, you wrote, to win, you must first understand, which is another spotlight that I think the trends and the Almanac beautifully exemplify, because when you have the data, you can make an informed decision, as opposed to just keep on doing what you've been doing, which we know doesn't work anymore. In 2016 was one of my favorite. It was disrupt yourself, which is probably the key to what's happened to the real estate industry. And then you always have a backup plan, always good. But 2020 was my favorite. It's a transformation has arrived, disruption surrounds us. The time for bold, clear action is now. And you've literally given everybody the tools to do that within this book.
Oh,
would you agree?
I appreciate that. If you read the trends report and you say, well, I don't understand any of this, or this is all new, then you've been living under a rock. If you say, well, I've heard of some of these things before, well, you should have, because it's important. What we try to do is not surprise you, not scare you, not sell you anything. We're trying to be your partner in knowledge and sharing. It is a lonely job to be a leader. It's a lonely job to be a CEO or a manager when you sometimes feel, well, you can't maybe discuss it with your spouse because maybe you feel they don't understand. You can't discuss it with all of your staff because they might get scared. You can't discuss it with your competitors because they'll take you out. So, you know, sometimes you don't have a sounding board and you're doing something and maybe you're doing the right thing, but you're not sure. So what the trends report does, it becomes like a roadmap for you. Every year when we publish it in November, you get 220 pages of heavy reading. This is not a picture book. You can't read it, you know, casually while you're, you know, on your iPhone standing in a Starbucks line for a coffee. You're going to have to dedicate 3 or 4 hours, get some quiet time, put yourself aside and say, I care enough about the industry that I work in, which I love very much. I care about my future. I care about the staff in my company or my team or my business. And I'm going to try and make myself as knowledgeable as I can about what I could do, should do, would like to do, would not like to do. And the report it's actually, once you're in a chapter and you engross yourself, it's a heavy read, but it is a delightful read because we live in your world and the world which you guys are. And we're in the same world. We care about real estate professionals, real estate brokers, real estate companies. I've been in it since 1983, so 37 years, and I'll never be in any other space. I've written 52 books, and that shows you, not that I'm prolific, that's not that I write out. We write one every 9 months, and I have for 25 years. It's what we care about. There's not a topic in real estate that we have not analyzed. And when it changes, and it does change. So we look at technology or the MLS or profitability of a company. Every 2 or 3 years, we'll look at it again and again and again because it changes. And then you look at something different. And you're trying to give that leader some advice, some help, some guidance, where they can sit and say, wow, here's a good point I might have forgotten, or I didn't think about it this way, or they've given me a different way to look at it. What if I tweaked it for my area or my company or my town and I rolled it out this way? Could I make $1 million? Could I save my company? Could I double the size of my company? That's exciting. And I know you do it every day. When you can help other people change their lives on a new path, which puts them up to greatness, awesome feeling, awesome feeling.
And that's essentially what I think you do so well, because as you know, when we wrote the 1 Minute Entrepreneur, we know that in general, people are so hard working in the business, they never work on the business. And that is a key element. You've done all the heavy lifting. You've done all of the categorizing. I know, I'm saying, you can lose weight carrying that thing around. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy read, but it is definitely fascinating, because you can't get out of your own ether. You've got to see what's happening around you to pivot. And in a market like today, I think pivot is the key. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You've got to remain current, and if you're not current, somebody else is going to go by you. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be the smartest pants in the room, but you can't be the dumbest guy in the room. And you can't ignore what's happening, whether it's something about diversity or technology or illness or COVID. You don't have to agree with everything, but you've got to make sure that you're current and that you're with it. And the information we give, the reason one of the reasons why T360 has been successful, I think so, and of course I'm always subjective, very person subjective, is that we don't try to color this in. Nobody pays to be included in any of our reports. You're not included because you paid to be included at the T3 Summit or the Trends Report. You're included because a lot of smart people that analyzed our space for a very long time sincerely and honestly believe that you, the person, the company, the association, the entity, are deserving of being put in here. And we looked at this one this year. I don't remember the exact number. I think there are 2,274, if I remember correctly, people and companies included. 2,274. I mean, it took us a little bit short of 2,000 hours to put this baby to bed. So yeah, clearly we're proud of it, because it ran our lives for 7-8 months.
And it was all encompassing, which is the only way you do things, which is it's going to get done. It's going to get done right. Yes. I have a quick question for you, because you brought up COVID, and that's the elephant in the room. Since you've developed that book, when you published the almanac, how have any of your views changed since the COVID crisis impacts economically and the upheaval? No?
The almanac is an analysis of where we stand as at the 31st of December 2019. So it is a total snapshot of everything in our space. It doesn't discuss what the future impact of things could be. Not the almanac. The Trends Report, yes, it does. Not the almanac. We are busy working on the 2021 Trends Report. That always comes out on the 1st of December. So I do 2 monster reports 6 months apart. The Trends Report, which we are working on for 2021, we do have a whole chapter on the pandemic, and we have a whole chapter just on diversity, and we have a chapter which will be discussing profitability. So those 3 chapters will most certainly be discussing the pros, cons, positives, and negatives of the struggles which we've had with pandemic, with stay at home, with closing of offices, with the diversity, the crisis we've had. So all of those things have impacted our business. But in most cases, I think the industry is coming through them actually better than they expected. And I am delighted when you talk or research some companies and you see what they've done. You go like, wow, you've actually stepped up further than what I thought you would have. And that's always a delight. So we're going to hurt a little bit. March was, we still coasted March because February was so great. So I think we still, the momentum carries through March. April hurt a little bit, but there's such a shortage of good quality homes for sale. There's a shortage of good quality people, agents and managers, that I think if you put those things together, the market has generally recovered on many levels. Selling of real estate, managing of companies, even profitability, that when you talk to some of the big ones, they'll tell you that they're going to hit this year's budget numbers by December. So
according to the people that I've worked with, it has been a very minor adjustment. I mean, most areas, clearly some areas had different impact because of the state regulations, but you bring up a good point. Anytime you have an impact like this, there's always a silver lining. And you, and including me, years ago were involved in switching to virtual. And you have done it wildly successfully because you're not in your home office. What I see is that it has forced companies where we had options before, it is now a new next. You have to be virtual. You have to allow for some kind of connection and services done virtually, which you've done extremely well yourself. And I know that that's been reflected in your trends over the years. You did say something, though, that I think would be of interest to everyone. You said you can't pay to be in the trends, although people would give you lots of money. So is there a group or a selection process or criteria for people? I mean, sometimes the impacts are positive. Is there anything you can speak to on that? Because that's going to be a massive decision.
Yes, you're right. It is one of the hardest things we do every year. Whether you refer to the trends report with the 10 chapters, which look at the changes and the trends in the future, whether you're referring to the SP200 that ranks the people and the individuals, we do extensive homework before we even start. And by extensive homework, I'm calling it 200 hours. I mean, so it's extensive just to get to a baseline of to say, where do we start? And then I'll take the people, for example. If we take the SP200, we would actually ask for nominations. We'll invite anybody. We'll reach out to the biggest companies. We'll get all of their org charts. We'll look at all the press articles that appeared on Inman and all the other stuff and look at any decision maker, mover, person who issued a press release. We will look at last year's list. We'll take all of that, put it into a database. That is usually around about 3,000 people already just the leaders. And if I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but if you're a vice president, we don't even take you. I mean, we'll cut you off because we already have just on the C level, we're already at 3,000. So, I mean, and we're going to cut off at 200. So when we go to 3,000, we're already tenfold over where we're cutting off. And then we'll start looking at how long have you been in the biz? How long have you been in the job? How many people report to you? How many people do you report to? How high are you in the food chain? How big is your food chain? How big is your company? How many offices? What's the budget? What's the volume? What's the sales? What's the turnover? The longevity. Do you have impact outside of your company? Do you have impact actually in the industry? Are you an industry shaper? Are you a mover shaker? Do you do things for your community? Are you in the chambers of commerce? Do you do things for the round table? I mean, so we look at all the other stuff. We put that into a spreadsheet and algorithm, and we try and sort that roughly in some kind of a seniority size scope order. Now, it's not exact because, of course, you can tweak the algorithms and the input and get a little bit of a different answer. But the SP200 doesn't cut somebody off or put somebody at number 500 when you should be at number 1. You could say to me, well, Stefan, number 199 and number 200, can't they be interchangeable? Sure, yes. Between a few slots, it's not an exact science. I would say it's maybe, I don't know, Terry, this is hard, maybe 70%, meaning calculative data, information. And then that last piece is just knowing the industry and knowing where everybody fits in. And there's not a person, generally speaking, on the SP200 that I haven't personally met. Most of the people on that list I've known for 2 decades. Most of them I've met 30 times, 40 times. Most of them I've seen their financials. So you get a good understanding of the person, the company, the entity over time. They share with you some of their strategies. Now, we can't publish that. Many times we've given that in confidentials, in confidence on an NDA, so we don't publish that. But you know the people reasonably well. And then you start dividing them out of the 3,000 into top 500, then top 300, then top 200. Then you put them in quartiles and say, well, this is going to be the top 50. This is the bottom 50. This is the middle 50. Then you compare them we compare them by everything. We compare all the women, then all the men, then all the association people, then all the tech people, then all the broker people, then all the franchise people, all the media people, all the educators. Then we mix them together. Then we readjust them. And then I bring all of my team together for a 1.5 day craziness. And we put down the makings of the list. And then we say to anybody in the room, can you challenge any name or any ranking or any placement of any person on the list? And if you can, you've got 30 seconds to tell me why I should move that person. And don't tell me that Terry's beautiful or that Gary Keller owns a company. Those are things we already know. You've got to tell me what's happened recently that's changed your perception of that person, or what has that person recently done that achieves notoriety or importance. So somebody would say, well, did you know that this company bought that company? Yes, we did. We've already taken that into consideration. Or no, we didn't. So then we adjust it, and we probably argue on every single person, I don't know, 10 times, where somebody would say, oh, well, I think Mr. A should be above Mr. B. We go like, really? Why? And we get mad at each other. We'd argue it all day. I mean, we would argue to try and find out what's the logic or the premise why we could move somebody. So we take the list very seriously. Then once we've done that for 2 days, we lock it down. Then we have some staff go and verify all the facts. We would call people, we will interview people, we will double check it. And I personally sleep on it for 2 weeks. And I go back to every name and say, have we made an error? Have we missed something? Should we include somebody else? And I go and look at the org charts of the companies and say, if we put this person in, is there anybody else on that food chain that we think has more influence or power or something like that? And then we lock the list away for a whole week so it can just simmer. So we don't do anything emotionally. And then we come back to the list and then we go and edit it and check it one final. So that whole process is 3 months.
Easily. And a lot of math, by the way. I mean, just a whole lot of math. Bless your heart. And people argue and they still live and they're done. So that's just a great thing.
When the list comes out, we have thousands of people that, of course, are happy and excited and grateful. And then there's always, I don't know, 10 or
There's
20
always going to be
people.
something. Yes.
There's 10 or 20 people which will give me the third degree, and they will, oh, I have been berated on social media. And I go like, oh, if you just knew how hard I tried to not have that happen or to prevent that, and you don't even know how bad it really is. We've already tried to accommodate something, right? But we really try to be as fair as we honestly can. If we do make a mistake, which doesn't happen often, but of course it happens. We've said to many people, if we've missed somebody, maybe because there's no way for us to know about everybody, but we try.
Yeah, well, it's not a random process, clearly. And thank you for explaining that, because I think a lot of people have that question, you know, what is it that creates that prestige to be included?